Welcome. We are here at the 2019 Hasbro Gaming Championships, the North American School Scrabble Championships. My name is Kevin Belinkoff. On my right, Jackson Smylie. And on my left, it's Josh Sokol. Sorry, Josh.
Yes.
We're going to be here for the entire action. Will Anderson will be joining us a little bit for the entire outcome for the next 2 days of amazing Scrabble action. We're going to get right to the game and catch up on some business along the way, but we are ready when you guys are. Let's go down to the table. And we see our director, Ben Greenwood, is there. Once he gets out of the way. Yes, it's a great shot of his elbow. All right, on the left there you see the Rackmasters. They are the defending champions. It is Noah on our left and Jeffrey on our right. And the team from DC Scrabble, the 13th team, is on our right. That's
so it's Ranja. Chasm and Ranja, and I think we can't see Chasm at the moment, and we see Ranja.
That's Chasm's arm. I know, we'll kind of shift over there. There we go.
There you go.
All right.
And they've begun.
And it seems the Rackmasters are going first, so you can see their clock has started, and we should get their rack shortly.
All right, we have... Now, for those of you who are new to Scrabble, we welcome you. We'll kind of talk you through what's going on. Each team's got 25 minutes of total play, and there in the lower left you can see the letters that they have on their rack. They go right to the board very quickly with...
There it is,
Foxed.
Very good.
Foxed. That's a great play.
Strong opening from the defending champions.
40 points.
And the placement is important, as you see. The F hits the double letter. And let's try not to move the board, guys. Oh, that's really a bad shot. Okay. All right, there we go. Just spin.
As you see, these kids are just not prepared for like this live stream.
Well, it is a new experience for them. It's a new experience. Scrabble on the web is not seen often. We've been fortunate enough to do bring this to you for the last few years.
So now you can see the DC's rack on the lower right side of the screen, and they have low lined up. And they might be looking at playing it parallel to Fox, making a bunch of two-letter words going up and down.
Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, they could even go...
And they're going underneath Fox.
Okay, now...
L and do.
All right.
You see the value of knowing those two-letter words. They actually could have put it right above the O in Fox.
I think they could have.
And picked up a couple of more. We'll kind of keep you up to date with the score along the way. Now, those of you who play online don't know how to keep score, or if you know how to keep score, it is certainly it spoils you a little bit, and that's one of the things in live tournament play that becomes very important, is keeping score along the way, making sure your opponent keeps the right score. Nobody's trying to make a mistake on purpose, but it does happen.
And it does look like Noah is very much on the scoring aspect, so I think we can trust him to give us what we need.
And that's one of the things that playing as a team can certainly help. One player may focus on the score, one may look at longer words. Scrabble in teams is a little different from how it is usually played, but at the school Scrabble level, that is how it is done. We've got 3 divisions here. This is from the championship division. We also have the challenger division, which is for newer players, and we've got a high
Speaking
school
of
division.
New, yeah. We have a new word.
And speaking of those parallel words, they play new. They pick up Don, B, and EW. If you're an old Scrabble player, that might look a little new to you, and that's because it is in the latest update of the official Scrabble Players Dictionary.
Long time coming for most Scrabble aficionados.
This is the first year.
EW was in there for a while, right?
EEW's been in there for a few years.
Yeah.
This is the first year you can play EW on its own.
Well, not only was EEW in there, EEEW was in there before EW.
What's the difference in pronunciation from EEEW and just EW?
I'll let Jackson...
I think it's ew versus a long ew for something that's just, you just have to have those 3 E's in there.
More disgusting, right?
Exactly.
Maybe even has 2 syllables.
EU, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right.
So I think that's the Rackmasters rack on the left.
Yeah, they haven't switched the rack over yet.
Because it is now the DC's turn, and you can see the rack slightly on the left. Oh, now we got it on the right. And they have some pretty good bingo tiles. As you can see, the S and the E and the T, those are really good bingo tiles. For those of you that don't know, a bingo is when you use all 7 letters in your rack, and you get a 50-point bonus. So you'll see both teams trying to keep tiles on their rack that are really good for bingoing. And as you can see, the DC is keeping their S for next turn, and the S is a very powerful tile, so you can see why they want to hold on to it for next turn.
They play beg and U, which is of course a female sheep. So you can use the E and the W in kind of any. I get W
Exactly.
E you could do too. So you'll see the board already kind of getting jammed up a little bit. We move over to the Rackmasters. They are the defending champions. They won it all last year. Was kind of surprised. They kind of came out of nowhere. They weren't one of the favorite teams coming in, and certainly did a tremendous job outlasting the competition. Looking down at their rack, you see the ING, the S. Those things get you a little excited, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's too many consonants to have a 7-letter word, a bingo on the rack. So they might be looking at playing something like mites this turn, using 6 of their tiles. Or instead, they're going to go with homing, keeping their S, just like DC's electing to do.
And ST is a good,
ST is a great
good
lead.
combination to.
Do we have an update on the score? It seems like the defending champs are well ahead at this point. They've opened with 40 points, they scored another 30, so
it seems like the score is 99 for the Rackmasters and 36 for DC School Scrabble.
All right, so they're definitely a bit behind here.
But as long as you're within a bingo, you're
Yeah.
generally okay.
It's
especially
early.
this
It's
in
early.
the game.
Yeah.
Now there's talk about the value of different letters. We always see the V and the C causing trouble because they, of course, don't live in a 2-letter word.
Exactly. And we've seen so far, we call this type of board a staircase board because you can see a lot of parallel plays after one another. So it kind of looks like a staircase, and that's where it's really, really important to know your 2- and 3-letter words.
Even
so
your
you'll see-
4-letter words.
Even your 4-letter words, exactly.
If they really want to get rid of that V and that C, I really only see one option for them to do that, and that's by playing VAC, the 3-letter word, and GETA, but it looks like they did not do that.
All right, so they go with tax. They take advantage of the X. It's only worth 8 because it sits on the board to begin with. They'll pick up 3 points for the T, some extra points for Ha, so that keeps them moving along. Now, you mentioned GETA, G-E-T-A. That shows you the value of knowing those small words. That's not a word. Do you know what it means? I don't know what it means.
No, I can check.
We'll check
Actually,
it.
we
We'll
have a
take a look.
dictionary right here.
I'll
Let's
tell you
see
what it means,
says.
and that's, of course, one of the interesting things about Scrabble, even at a championship level. Not everybody knows what the words mean.
Exactly. All you have to know is whether or not it's a word.
All right, so we have the definition here of GETA, G-E-T-A. It is a Japanese wooden clog. So,
Didn't you know that? Come on.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever come across one of those in the wild before.
Now, while we were talking about that, we mentioned the S and the T that those guys had. They
Yeah.
drew some horrible letters.
They drew 5 vowels, and you can see etui, E-T-U-I, is a great word for unloading 3 vowels at once. And not only that, they had a second great aspect of etui. Keeping the S, they set up an S hook for themselves for next turn. So next turn, the Rackmasters can make a word hooking on to etui with the S, playing to the triple. So etui is a really ideal play
Now,
for
on the
setting
other
themselves
hand,
up.
they've set up the other team, and look at what they've got.
The other team.
Well, I think the
that's
other team- I
Oh,
think this is the
that's-
Rackmasters on the
okay,
left.
We're still looking at the Rackmasters.
Let's not
There
get
we
ahead
go.
of
Yeah.
ourselves here. Let's see
Okay,
what
so
the DC.
now they do have
DC.
an S.
They do have the S, but they have a lot of clunky
Can they
consonants
get
to go
the
with
S?
it.
Can they get the S?
They can get SCAD. That's all I'm seeing. But
S-C-A-D.
the issue with playing SCAD is that
what
that
I'm
keeps JVW, and that's not going to be a happy rack next turn. So they may want to keep their S for next turn and hit etuis.
Yeah, they're probably a little bit in trouble here unless they draw a few vowels. As we saw, the defending champs drew 5 vowels on their last pull. I'm sure that Kazim and Ranja would have preferred to draw a couple of those instead.
But looking at what happened, how the board kind of worked itself out, they set themselves up, the Rackmasters set themselves up for that triple, to get to the triple word if they have an S, but you've got to play a little defense at the same time. They're fortunate in that the team from DC, even though they have an S, doesn't look like they can capitalize on it in a big way.
Definitely.
Now, do you play defense? Let's put you guys in the
Well, can we-
shoes of the DC team. What would you do here? Would you grab that S and grab that lane so that the other team wouldn't have it?
I don't think so. I think what you do is there's no guarantee that the Rackmasters have an S with a TUI. It looks like, from our perspective, they just have a lot of vowels, and a TUI is a bit of a forced play.
So
And it looks like they're in the
a little
trade.
shout out here, though. Actually, the kids from DC just exchanged 3 tiles. I believe they exchanged JVC, which is the initials of our official, what is it, pairings master?
know.
Vince Castellano, or that might be his son, Josh. I think Josh is I think his initials are JVC. I don't know. That probably
now-
wasn't.
So this worked out very well for the
Rackmasters must have
Rackmasters.
loved them trading in. The moment you see they're exchanging, you're sitting on a bingo that's going to be worth a ton of points. They set themselves up well, knocked it down with diapers.
And we have a score update. It is now 198 for the Rackmasters and 53 for the DC School Scrabble number
All right,
13.
so DC's got to get back in. This is tough. It's so tough when you're behind. You look at your rack, it stinks. And now they've improved it a little bit. They sent back the V, and they got another one. So that's just like a rule of Scrabble. That always happens.
But at least they got some more vowels now. They have a pretty balanced rack in front of them. They no longer have this consonant problem from before.
But they seem like they're having a good time. So you know what?
Yeah,
Why
that
don't
is
we
good.
just bask in their smiles for a moment here?
They do have some long words.
They're happy to be here. You know, look at that.
There's waved and wived and viewed. They've got some opportunities to find a word. I don't know if they'll fit on the board. What's the progression as you play? Do you like look at your rack first, then the board, then what you're left with? How does that work out?
Yeah, you kind of go back and forth between the two. I mean, you look at your rack first just to see what you're working with. And then from there, you look at the board to see what the best spots on the board are to play. And you look at the colored squares on the board. Those are the ones that help you score the most points. And right now you can see they saw that triple letter score and the double word score above it. So they're going to be looking to
They're gonna play
capitalize.
Diva. So
Just one short of that double, unfortunately.
They do keep a W, E, and an S. The E and the S very strong. W kind of.
They seem to like the W. One thing that's nice about keeping the W is it does go next to the E in diapers. And you can see there's a triple letter score right beside the E in diapers, which lets the W go both ways, scoring a ton of points.
Yeah, you get 12 for one direction, 12 for the other direction. If you can squeeze it all the way up to a double or a triple, then
You're talking
even
50
better
points
shot.
for sure.
All right.
So we see the nasty J over on the Rackmasters. That kind of gums up your rack as well, although with all those vowels in the F.
You know, in all honesty, right now, I think that this is a good thing to have the J. It's not usually a great thing, like you want to get 7-letter word down and the J really eats into those chances, but now that they're ahead by so many points, I think the J is really useful just to score, and you'll see they're doing
gonna
that
go up
right
to
now.
G
They're playing
and-
G for
yeah.
33.
And of course, if you've got the J, that's an 8-point tile that your opponents can't have as well. So they play G going all the way up to the triple word score in the corner. The E hits the D to make the word ED, ed. Again, the value of those 2-letter words, that's the first thing you got to learn. When you're playing competitive
For
Scrabble,
sure.
first thing you want to learn are those 2-letter words. And we mentioned, you see EW on the board, OK has been added. Those are the 2 latest additions to the Scrabble Player's Dictionary.
So you'll notice that both teams have an S on their rack, and that's because they both love the S tile as they should. And one thing you'll notice about this board is the word homing is setting up a really big, juicy S hook to pluralize it with. And as far as I know, homings is not actually a valid word. And that's going to be going through both teams' minds about whether they're going to challenge homings when it comes up and whether they're going to play it if they have it available. So I'm sure they're both really, really interested in that homings hook, and they're both making a different decision on how to deal with it.
Oftentimes, the rule of thumb, especially in school Scrabble, is if you think it might be a word, go for it. There are 3 things that can happen, and 2 of them are good. So like running the ball in football, or passing the ball, they say.
It's kind of true, because if you're playing a word that no one's sure of, the challenge rule comes into effect. It's very difficult to challenge a word you're unsure of, because if you challenge that word, you will lose your turn.
And that's one of the kind of nuances of playing Scrabble. As you begin to play, someone gave me the advice once, when you start playing, challenge every word you're not sure of. Now you're going to blow a bunch of games, but for the most part, when you challenge a word, if it's right or if it's wrong, you never forget it. It sticks
That
in your
is
head.
true.
So it's going to improve your play in the long run if you challenge a lot, but you're going to get burned a few times.
They made a very interesting play right now.
They're making hair.
They're playing hair.
So they play the H on that E in diapers that we were talking about. That was kind of staring them right there. Now they could have used that S to get even more points. They're trying to set themselves up.
Yes, so if they used their S, I think they would have scored 17 more points. But as you can see, they're setting up a huge S hook for themselves. And if the Rackmasters don't have an S or a Y to hook Harry, then they could score a huge play next turn.
Whoa.
Well,
All right.
that's the
the rack.
DC rack.
Let's
which,
forget about that for
yeah,
a moment.
didn't do him so well, and really didn't do well because look
no.
at that.
Okay,
Oh,
look what's
boy.
happening here. This is very interesting. Okay, they're playing feigns,
Or maybe not.
Maybe not. There may be a.
That's the best play, isn't it?
It's
Well, it
not
would be the
a
best
word.
play.
Now it does open up a big triple lane on the bottom, but that's going to be so
It
many
scores
points.
48 points. The only issue is feign is actually an adjective and does not take an S
Oh,
at
so-
the end. So
oh,
this is not a valid word.
Oh,
But
Let's see
it's
if they'll
very
be called
difficult
out
to
on
challenge
it.
right now.
Well, it's one
And
of
we'll
those
see if they
things
hold.
where they're going to. Oh, there's a little bit
Oh,
of pause.
looks
There
like
might be a
Maybe
pause.
they may have called a whole. No, the
It
clock
looks
is
like
running,
they're drawing.
and they are
Okay,
going to let
so-
them draw. So that shows you the value in knowing again what the words mean, whether they take an S, whether there's some nouns that don't. Obviously, adjectives often don't. The homing situations, which would be a gerund if it took an S. A little grammar lesson for all of you. You're thinking it's way too early in the morning to discuss grammar. So a lot of points for that. The team from DC took a shot. This is sort of like throwing a Hail Mary. They're behind by a lot of points. They had to open up the board. If there was no S or Y on their opponent's rack, they could have taken advantage of it if they could have gotten away with it. You can see the score there, 279 to 98, with the Rackmasters out in front. You'll see sometimes, particularly in the early matches, some pretty big score discrepancies. Sometimes that's because of the skill level of the two teams. Sometimes it's just, hey, that's Scrabble. I mean, you're not getting the right letters, things aren't going your way, and sometimes you've got a situation where teams are trying to stay close, and that opens up the board and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and both Noah and Jeffrey of the Rackmasters are seasoned tournament players. They've played many tournaments individually as well, so I know they're both very strong players.
And Jackson knows what he's talking about. Jackson is a former school Scrabble champion.
Indeed, 8 years ago now.
8
Can't
years
believe it's
ago.
been so long.
All right,
All
they're
right.
playing tower.
And they're
Doesn't
keeping-
score much.
They're
but
keeping a very strong QU combination and the strong S. So it
Now,
looks
when
like
you're behind like this and you get the Q, it's sort of like, oh no, because you either play it off really quickly, you try and hang on to it for a super bingo, but it's really tough to play.
But I think that's what they're going for here. Since they're down by over 2 bingos at this point, they need to get an 100 and 120 point
All
play.
right, here
and
we
the
go.
Q is the way to do
this
that.
might be the nail in the coffin.
All right,
Lazier.
we see lazier. The Z is sitting
Beautiful
right
find.
on that triple word. And again, we talk about the value of those 2-letter words. FE, which is a Hebrew letter. AR, which is a English language letter. Knowing your letters, that's what we talk about. Knowing your letters, currency, musical notes. Those things really help you out.
Oh man, look
And-
at this rack now. They
Yeah,
kept
drew
they
4
kept
consonants.
QUS. It did not go their way.
It looks even uglier when the letters are on their sides and upside down.
Well,
it's
actually,
like Russian a little bit.
I kind of like that. It's kind of like Picasso a little bit.
There are some players, some really good players, that keep their letters like that. I mean, this what these guys are doing. It's just
I
so
can't imagine
strange to
doing
me.
that, yeah.
All right, they're exchanging their U. That's
That's tough.
Yeah, the U is a very good friend to the Q. Hopefully they draw another one next turn.
Now you'll see they're writing down their plays. That's a combination of a few things. They keep score, obviously, but they also keep track of the letters that are available in the bag. It could be that there are other U's out there. In fact, I don't see any U's on the board.
I think there's one in Etui.
That's it.
right
That's
now.
it. So there's 3 other U's. When you saw the board, the distribution of the letters is there, so players sort of know what it is, and they keep track of it on that paper you see. Very quickly, a lousy rack turns
wow.
into a good play.
That is a
Great
beautiful play.
Rackmasters are making some very strong decisions here. As you can see at the clock in the corner, the Rackmasters have not taken much time to play all their moves. Despite having 25 minutes for the whole game, they're putting a lot of time pressure on the DC team.
They've got plenty of time, though. They've got 12 minutes,
They
12
do,
and a half
yeah.
minutes. You'll see, again, when we play school Scrabble, some teams go very quickly. Some teams take their time. If you have Dramamine, that would help with that shot.
Yeah, that was.
And now, remember they traded in a V and the U, and they got a C, which also messes things up. So it's been really a tough go
Tough
forward
go,
for
yeah.
the DC team.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of teams from DC. If you stick with us over the next couple days, you're going to see a number of teams from our nation's capital. Really strong school Scrabble program there, and they play in all three of our divisions. I mentioned we got the championship division, which is what we're seeing now, challenger division, and we've got high schoolers as well.
You see. So the DC players just played code, and the O was sideways. And I think we saw Noah very, very, very quickly readjust the O. There are some players that will just they can't stand when
Drives
a
you a
letter.
little nuts.
Yeah, but I mean we can see it. It looks like they're kryptonite a little bit to have the DC players.
Now, when you see an opponent that does that, do you just do that on purpose to mess with them?
You could.
No,
you
but
definitely
do
could.
you, is my question.
I would, yeah. I might. Like if I really felt like I wanted to get them.
Yeah.
Usually I'm just trying to play my own game, trying to do the best I can. But if I feel like things aren't going my way, I might pull that one out on them.
There are
It's a
little
very
tricks-
slight annoyance, you
There are
know?
little tricks to get in your opponent's head. One that some players love to do is most players start the game going horizontally. And if you start the game going vertically, it drives some people nuts.
Yeah, you're actually talking to two
We were
vertical
talking about
openers
that.
right here.
Yeah.
Do you-
So we were
do you
talking
do
about
both
that
do that.
You just do
yesterday.
that to irritate people?
Absolutely. It's a good strategy. Some people don't like it, and then you gotta get under their skin any way you
All right,
can.
so who says that Scrabble's only for gentlemen? Gamer,
It's for
very nice
gamers for
play.
sure.
Nice
That's who it's
play.
for.
Look at
Very
that.
nice
They
play,
hit
gamer.
again, those two-letter words. And it has
So many
the
points,
scores, way out front, but it also jams the board up a little bit. If you can take away those opportunities for your opponent to grab some points easily or long words, it's going to make it difficult for them. It's also going to make it difficult when they have letters like
For
this.
sure, yeah. And as you can see,
They
above
drew another
gamer,
C. Oh man.
when they made the word go, that actually makes a place for a bingo to go if you can hook go with an E or an A. So something like a word ending in ED or ER is going to fit right above gamer
Yes.
there. And before gamer, there was no real place on the board for a 7-letter word to go. So, I mean, unfortunately, DC does not have the tiles to do it this time, but maybe a few turns down the road.
And you're always looking for that, even though the score is kind of out of reach. You're always looking to make the best play for
For sure.
circumstances. If it's a close game, you're going to tighten up a little bit. In a game like this, maybe open it up. The margin of victory does matter. We've got
Right.
a short number of games, so that's used as a tiebreaker. I know we have caps on that in the early rounds. You can't, even if you win by, I think it's more than 150 points, you only get credit for a 150-point win. That's because
Okay,
it's
I
school
see.
Scrabble. We kind of want to keep things reasonable. And you're going to see a lot of different skill levels along the way. Rackmasters up. You see the score on the top, 376 to 122. And we're talking, there's sort of these landmarks. If you can score 400 points, especially in a school Scrabble game,
Yeah, that's
pretty
great
darn
if you can
good.
get 400. And
Now-
they're almost there right now.
Oftentimes, it's because there's a phony there. There is one on the board, but that's just a learning experience. Again, had they challenged that, they would never forget. I won't. I
For
will
sure,
never.
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't know that it doesn't take an S.
And I think feigns is one of those words that every player has played at least once. I know I've played feigns at least once, just on accident. And it sometimes takes a while to learn which words can take the S in the back and which can't.
You've played every word in the dictionary at some point, haven't you?
Oh,
Yeah, and I
we
mean, I
wish.
doubt feigns was intentional. It doesn't look like an intentional phone.
Oh, no,
do you
it's
know
an
what,
honest
do
mistake.
you know what feign means?
I do not know.
It means glad.
Okay, well, I'm sure they were feign about
They were
that
feign
play.
they're here. That's right. Now we're looking them up. We don't know all the definitions. Nobody does.
Looks
Although
like
some of the
they're-
better players, that's what they study again, because you would then know that an S doesn't go there.
It looks like they're counting plays for some reason. I wonder if they really just want to score as many points as possible.
Well, it's always good to, when you play in a tournament, getting that first game under your belt, big
Exactly.
win. You know, there's nothing worse. You start off, you lose.
Well,
tough.
imagine being the DC players right now, and then like the champ team just like in the middle of the game says, "Actually, I scored 5 more points on that play 5 turns ago. Can you please give me 5 more points?" That might get into their heads as well.
And we talk about it is tough to keep score because so often people are playing online, and it keeps score for you. So that's a skill you're just not learning.
For sure.
And some of the older players, they know it because they go back to pre-internet days when we used to have to actually count up those numbers.
Oh yeah.
And you can see the DC's rack is just suffering from all these consonants right now. The Q has been there for a long time now, and there's no good place to play the Q. So that's going to become a real issue on their rack. And as you can see, they don't have a lot of good options now. And this board itself is getting very constricted now. There's not a lot of places to play.
Now they've held on to the Q. At some point, you got to think about putting it back. Now, there've got to be more than 7 tiles left in the bag, aren't there?
Yeah, there's more
Yeah.
than 7. There's about 12 tiles in the bag.
And the reason we ask that, if there are fewer than 7 tiles in the bag, you can't trade in. That option is taken away from you. And so, let's say this was a close game. Let's say there's 12 letters in the bag. Would you think about throwing the Q back in?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's just no prospects for the Q anymore, especially since they got rid of their U. There's nothing to do. They're hoping for something big. Scores 10 points. It could be double, triple, but they've got to pull something out of somewhere. Well, it actually looks like, oh, that's interesting. So they've just played Pogo.
Is Pogo good? I'm not sure it is.
It is good in regular tournament Scrabble. They're using a slightly different dictionary. I think Pogo is probably.
I think Pogo's a word.
Let's
Yeah, it's
take a
probably
look.
still.
Pogo is good.
It's good.
It's actually in here as a verb.
Yeah.
To Pogo, yes.
Because you jump up and down on a stick is to pogo.
So the interesting thing about Pogo actually is I was saying they need to get rid of their Q, or at least use it. And by playing Pogo, they actually allow themselves to draw an I for that famous 2-letter word QI, and then they can make PI and QI, and they can score, what is that, 30 points?
Yeah, that would be a great prospect for the
And
Q.
in some ways, it's even more than 30 because if you get stuck with that Q at the end of the game, that's 20 points to your opponent.
Right,
So that's a 50-point swing.
Yeah, it might
That's
be 30
big.
on the scoreboard, but it's the value far surpasses that. You're definitely.
Now you've got to figure the Rackmasters are maybe a little worried that they might get the Q. So you're doing a dance here.
Exactly.
You not want to open up things too much, but you don't want to shut them down entirely.
And that's one of the reasons that DC might want to exchange the Q, just so that the Rackmasters can draw it themselves and then get stuck with it in the end game, giving 20 points back to DC. And one thing that was interesting is the Rackmasters played FUB last turn, getting rid of their U, and now they're probably a bit worried about drawing the Q because they don't have a U to go along with it, so they might be trying to play very few tiles to avoid the Q, because the Q is a very rough tile to draw right now.
You know what FUB means?
I do not.
FUB means to fob. You know what fob means?
That's a good question.
I thought fob was like a key.
The key, yeah.
let's,
Maybe it's a verb now.
let's see. Let's take a look. Fob.
Man, so we got the Rackmasters here. We got Kevin here, the Quiz Master.
Fob means to deceive. To
Okay.
deceive. Don't fob me. All right.
All right,
I'll kind of
how
give you
they-
some of the definitions along the way. As I said, it's a lot of fun, first of all, but it also does help your play, knowing what the words mean, especially more common ones if they maybe take an S, maybe don't, an ing or whatever. Let's see what they have. They got the K. That can get tricky at times.
Yeah, they have a few good options with the K. And one thing that's very interesting to note is that both blanks are still
Oh
in the
my
bag.
goodness, that's
Neither blank
right.
has been played. And that's probably a very interesting thing to consider because not only do they want to draw the blanks, they don't want to draw the Q. So they're kind of playing this weird balancing act.
And they got to think, if by now, with only 12, now fewer than 12 in the bag, you got to think your opponent at least
You
has
must
one
think that.
blank, maybe both.
And that's one of the reasons I think they're not opening up a lot of good opportunities because they're worried if they open up something too big, their opponent is going to hit them with a bingo or something like that.
Well, it is pretty closed off. I mean, not a whole lot of words are going to end in J, certainly long enough
For
to
sure.
open that up. You could play
There are
R-A-J
only
or T-A-J.
2 words longer than 4 letters that
That end in
end
J?
in J.
Well, what
And they're
are
the
they?
same word. Swaraj, S-W-A-R-A-J, and Svaraj with the V in place of the W.
Have you ever played those rules?
I have played at least one of them. It's
Wow.
really fun to end a word in J because it doesn't happen all that often.
And one thing that's interesting actually is I played Will Anderson, who we'll see on the stream very shortly.
Yeah.
We played a game of Scrabble online a few weeks ago, and Will actually came back into the game with the word swaraj
Did he?
for 64 points. So I have a
I
big
did see that
vendetta
game.
against that word right now.
I understand. You know, what's it like to play Will online and lose? I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know either. I think I
I played Will one time. I tell this story every year. And I was fortunate enough to win somehow.
All right,
And
Jackson.
I will never play him again.
Who won the bet? Who won the bet? We were betting on when Kevin
When I
would
would bring
drop
that
that one.
I made it almost through the first game.
I know. I didn't think it would happen. And you can
Almost
see
made
the
it through the
blank
first game.
has still not been drawn. This is wild.
Maybe we did like we were setting the boards up yesterday, and maybe we just totally spaced out.
Oh, that would be bad. They actually, before we begin, all 100 tiles are out on the board, so they do see them, and primarily they make sure the blanks
Yeah,
are
but
there.
the viewers don't have to know that, Kevin.
Well, we don't want to have a protest on the game. That would be
It's happened before that either the distribution. I think there was a point where there were too many U's, too many R's.
How does that happen? How do you get too
And
many in
it's
there?
just the production. Like they have to sort through them and put them in little baggies, and then like they send them out. It's just like a production facility like any other, and there just could be a malfunction.
I had a game once where at the end of the game we're putting the back on the in the little corners, and there's a letter missing, and it was still in the bag.
Well, it looks like
That's probably happened a few times.
Oh, it looks like they're gonna make a really good play here. I mean, are they?
Well, they
maybe
picked up the
they're
U.
doubting.
Picked up the
okay.
U, which is
And
great.
so
It's possible
quad-
they're doubting DAW, but it looks like they're trying to play quad above go and aw, but they probably are not sure enough of DAW.
And now it scored 29 points.
And you can see actually their clock is dwindling a little bit. They're
6
under
minutes.
6 minutes at this point, so it might start to become a factor.
Some of the other games must be rounding out. You saw their tournament director grab a microphone, try and give some instruction to the other. We've got over 200 players this year in all three divisions. So you see there that situation where there was that one lane, you could end a letter in an E or an A. They've now closed that off
No
with the
longer.
V. Yeah,
All right,
that V is deadly.
I mean, probability-wise, the likelihood that the Rackmasters have a blank, well, as you can see, they have drawn one, is pretty high. So I think that's a good decision for their differential's sake to block that bingo area.
Absolutely.
So you see that
They've
that
lost the
blank
game.
tile's got a little dog on it, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is a dog.
That can be used as any letter. You don't get any points for it, but it certainly has a lot of flexibility. This board is just a mess.
You
My
were-
goodness.
And
Yeah.
one thing they might be thinking about, since they have the S and the blank, is they could drop their L right next to the UM on the board on the left side, making the word lum. And what that does is it sets up another S hook for them, just like the Atui play earlier. That would let them hook it with an S and hopefully bingo next turn.
And that's, well, they're looking to bingo next turn. They just
They are for
played
sure.
an L and Y, get rid of the Y. They've
Very
got some
nice
good
play,
letters.
extending the
This is
word
great.
already on the board. You don't see that all too often.
Yeah,
you
that's-
usually see.
It's tough to think that way sometimes. Can I just put a letter
Oh,
there?
look at that. All right.
All right,
It
so
is.
that's
They
a
got their
blank.
cue.
Obviously, that's going to be played as an I. When you're playing, you do have to identify it for your opponent.
But I think
People make
everybody.
mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
They circle the wrong letter or whatever. But here, we're going to assume it's an I, and they got it down. And that Q hit the double letter. So that's 20 points for the Q, another 10 points for the Z. And hanging on to that Q really, really hampered them, but they were able to get away with a board for more than 30 points.
All right.
All right,
So
so
now
bag's
this is the
empty.
end game. Yes.
Bag's empty, so they've got 5 letters.
So Jackson's whole idea did not
I think it's
apply.
not going to work with the whole bingo situation, but they still passed the 400 mark. They're even edging in on 500.
It's actually really interesting. As you guys can see that huge black clipboard on the table, it looks like Noah is using his own set, his own clipboard, and his own score sheet. Oh, wow. Unfoxed.
Unfoxed. Is that a word?
Um,
We're going to look it
I'm
up.
not sure. I'm not a big fan. I
don't-
want to say it's not.
think so.
Kind of a risky
No,
move at the
no,
end of the game.
no.
You got the
It is.
game won, but You
And
don't
we'll
want
see.
to.
They might be discussing it right now. They look a bit perplexed, the DC team.
Like,
And they actually are saving
good.
DC on their
it's
rack.
not a word, unfoxed, but they're
And
letting,
letting
it
it
go.
slide.
They're
It's a
gonna,
fine
and they
decision.
may be going out. So then they
Yes.
figured, let's go out. They put the U down, which helped them because they were able to get rid of a C and a D without any other vowels. That was going to be tough. The DC team will pick up 6 extra points for the S, I, and L. In tournament play, you take your opponent's tiles and you double the value and add it to your score. The official rules, of course, one team subtracts, one team adds. Same result. Scores are a little bit higher.
Right.
And they're going to do some business to wrap it all up. We're going to do some business as well. Will Anderson, you were asking where he is after still being ashamed of losing to me. He's going to be out on the at the table talking with our winning team, and in this case, there's quite a bit to talk about with a huge score that he wants to show you in a big way. And
Very happy with that.
us versus them. There you go.
Oh, good.
And,
Oh my gosh.
and again, as our defending champions, they're used to playing at that table. They're used to being here live for all of you. We're going to set them up to talk a little bit with Will. We're just getting started. Just our first game of the competition. We've got more ahead of us. We've got Josh. We've got Jackson adding to the action this year. It's going to be great. We're really excited about being here. Thank you guys for showing up.
Yeah, thanks
thanks,
for round
Kevin.
2.
How'd you drove here from Canada?
We flew in.
You flew in.
we
Somebody
flew
told
in.
me you drove. Never mind.
Quite the far drive.
It is, and it was a rough flight too.
We considered biking. No, yeah, lots of flights were canceled.
They
It
were.
was extremely rainy yesterday in the area of Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York.
And it's still apparently a little bit gloomy outside. We're inside here at the Philadelphia Marriott for all the action in this year's School Scrabble Championship. Above us, you see the final score, the Rackmasters 473, DC Scrabble 226.
More than doubling.
More than double.
473-point game to get you started. It's got to be good.
Once
That's
again,
exciting.
the spread caps mean that 200-plus point win is only going to count for, 150 or 100 points? So it's not so bad to start
It's
off
not so
the day.
bad, and things will continue. What happens as the pairings go on, the more successful teams will start playing one another. And as we get closer and closer to the end, it gets very exciting and very tense at the table because one team is sometimes eliminated just by losing the game. And at that point, spread doesn't matter. Oh, look at that. They're showing off with their best plays down there. They got Fox, Lazier, Feigns, and Diapers. So they're keeping track of everything. Now, what? This is a reasonably long tournament. It's not as long as like the Nationals.
Right.
But when you're playing in a long tournament, your first game, what do you do afterwards? Just try and get it out of your head? Do you kind of go over it again?
Yeah, so everyone has a different
Depends, right?
strategy. I know for me, I try to stay calm. I try not to freak out or anything. I just take it one game at a time. And yeah, I just try to go throughout the day, relaxing.
On the other hand, I do my best to freak out as much as possible.
It's a good strategy.
Whatever works. Whatever works. I just, at this point, usually need a nap. Oh, look, we got names underneath us this year. Josh Sokol, Rubenstein. I didn't know there was. Is it Rubenstein or Rubenstein?
Yes, it's Rubenstein.
Rubenstein,
yes.
not Stein. I will do my best to get it right.
You do not need to say that name.
Oh, you went just Sokol?
Sokol is fine. They can leave it like that. I like
right.
having the longest name.
It's a long name.
It's a long
I
name.
have.
Tallest person at the
I also
table.
have the longest body. Not that much information there, I guess, but I guess yeah, that's a thing.
Now, we mentioned we got Josh and we've got Jackson, we've got Will out on the floor. We're going to talk to all of them throughout the competition, and they each sort of have a unique perspective on it. Jackson, as we said, was a school Scrabble champion, so he's going to be able to give us that. Josh, a real word expert, is going to be able to look at some of those things, and Will's actually won the national title a couple of years ago. That's going to be coming up in Reno in July. You guys playing?
Oh yes,
Definitely.
And at this point, the registration is still open, but at this point, Jackson is the highest ranked player headed into that tournament.
I know. I feel a lot of pressure now. I have to perform, and we'll see how it goes.
Do
But
you feel
again, there's-
pressure being that top rated player?
Definitely, and as you can see, you know how the Rackmasters were here the first game. I'll be hopefully on stream the first game at the Nationals. But you know, and I'm sure just like the Rackmasters are feeling a lot of pressure. It's tough being the top seed. You have a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah. Come down to Division 4. Play with us in Division 4. It's a party.
we would love to. You know what?
Yeah, it wouldn't last too long.
Some days it's just like, oh, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mentioned Division 4. We'll be playing divisions. Division 1 is the top of the line, and these guys are playing in that division. I don't think there are any school Scrabble players that play in Division 1, but there are in Division 2. I
For
know
sure,
that.
yeah. And we'll see some of those in the high school division when we go over to that game next.
And we talk about, if you're playing in Division 2, especially at the age of 14, 15 years old,
that was
you're
good.
a
News
good
fine.
Scrabble
Yeah,
player.
For sure, yeah,
Those
you should
guys
proud
are
of
going to be
that.
up in Division 1 before you know it. Division 3,
No.
Division 3.
That's a good play. All right, guys. So I'm here with. Why don't you? I know you both of you guys, but why don't we just take a minute and you guys can both introduce yourselves? So we.
Hi, I'm Noah from Ottawa. I'm Jeffrey from Connecticut.
Right. So like I said, I know both of you guys, and any fan of the School Scrabble broadcast, we know you guys because you were the winners last year. So I mean, you guys came out of nowhere from our perspective, and just were playing amazing on the stream. So how has it been this past year as the winners? Has it been when you went back home and, got to tell all of your friends that you guys just won, thousands of dollars? Was that a really cool experience?
Yeah, it was really cool. The adults seemed to care more than my friends. My friends kind of passed it on, but it was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with me. It's cool to win, though.
Yeah, it's it's really cool to, at your age, I would have been very happy to win, $5,000 or whatever it was. And you did it by really playing excellent Scrabble. It was actually very impressive. So, obviously I was watching the game, and I was intrigued when you played homing, which was an excellent play, leaving ST, and then you guys drew 5 vowels. I'm sure you noticed. Not what you want to draw after you leave such a nice 2-tile leave. What were you thinking when you saw those vowels come out?
I think the first 2 we put down was IE, so I'm like, okay, this is gonna go good. Then the other ones came.
And then you saw.
Yeah, I also know is really good at dealing with having weird situations like that. So it wasn't that much of a deal, especially because we were ahead a bit at that point.
Right. So what I thought was so interesting was you get those 5 vowels, and then you played a twee, I just loved that play. Do you guys want to talk about what your thought process was when you played that move, or?
Keeping the IES leave, which can draw bingo, then setting up the S hook.
Yeah. I don't play as risky normally, but Noah normally plays super risky, and I like to follow what he does. And we would have had other places to play if they had taken it.
Yeah.
Wasn't much
It was either that or change IEU. So.
Yeah, so I just love that because, as you were saying, everybody has different tolerance for the risk of moves that you're making in a game. But in that situation, you've got an S, you're making a great setup for it, and you see the upside right here. That's why aggression pays off. It paid off beautifully. You guys found your bingo. You drew it right off the bat. That was really just a really high-level play. So I was very impressed by that. And I guess the other thing that I was wondering was, if really you guys played absolutely flawlessly, the only thing I would say is that actually feigns, excuse me, I upset it. Yeah, it's an adjective in TWL. So in a dictionary we're playing. Yeah, it's good in Collins. Yeah, it's good in Collins, which is an international dictionary that is slightly larger for those that are newer to the Scrabble community. There are different lexicons that we use. I know that Noah is very familiar with lots of different. I've seen you play Collins tournaments before and do excellently. So that could have been where feigns came from. But honestly, given that feign is an acceptable word, that's a really hard challenge to make. So it ended up being, that was better than any other play you could have made. So did it cross your mind at all when you were playing that, or it was just like a given that was probably...
I thought that was good immediately. I've played it before in the past. In fact, we didn't have any doubt about playing it on that turn because we were thinking about playing it before to do feigns where we'd have the F going 2 ways on the triple.
We played G where we're hoping to draw like an R or an N or something to hit with over here. FAIS to try to hit there.
Yeah, so you guys wouldn't know this, but all the commentators were all saying, and I agree, I have as well, we've all played feigns in games before, so it's an incredibly common word to play. Well, look, I know you guys have to get to your next game. Just wanted to talk to you. Great start in your attempt to defend your title from last year. So congratulations. We were really impressed with how you guys played this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, all right, I'll let you get to it, and I guess I'll throw back to the booth now, or we might have a little bit of a break as we set up the next round. So stay tuned, and we'll be back with more action from the North American School Scrabble Championship.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Will. That was
Thanks,
fascinating.
guys.
wasn't
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm teasing. Our audio isn't working, so we couldn't hear anything that we were saying. But I'm sure it was important. I'm sure it was interesting. We're going to try and get into the heads of these kids after the games every time. That should be a little new addition we've got for our Scrabble Championships this year. We're going to take a little bit of a break, reset the game for round 2, and we'll see you in a little bit for that.